Hi, I'm here at DAppCon 2022 in Berlin, and I caught up with Anna George, who leads the CoW team. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
It's good
Glad
to see you.
Be here, yeah.
For those who don't know about CoW, tell us what is CoW and what does it have to do with cows?
Cool, yeah. CoW is a DEX that's currently deployed on Ethereum mainnet and on Gnosis chain, and soon hopefully also available on a few other layer 2s. And essentially what CoW is, it's in a way a meta DEX aggregator. So we are able to tap into liquidity that is available on AMMs, but also on other DEX aggregators. And the way we do this is we facilitate an off-chain competition of so-called solvers that are basically looking into the orders that get submitted by our users. So users, they don't send an Ethereum transaction, but they would rather sign an intent to trade. So basically, making available information on this is like my sell token, this is the limit price I'm willing to accept, and like the order, how long I want my order to be valid for. And then this decentralized solving competition is optimizing for surplus that they can generate for users. So the better the value that they can create for users, the more likely they would win the competition, and the winning solver is then submitting the transaction on chain, and for users it's completely MEV protected. And part of the MEV protection is coming from these so-called cows. You asked why are we called CoW? And the reason is that we are able to match orders peer-to-peer, and if we do so, there's no way to extract any value from the transaction.
Yeah, so the way that you are able to achieve this MEV protection is by like batching transactions in one transaction. So rather than having like a bunch of transactions showing up in a block, the solvers are grouping these transactions into one, which is eliminating the ability for, or at least within that batch of transactions, someone from extracting MEV from the transactions.
Right, and if you give like one very simple example, let's assume that you have one user that's wanting to sell some DAI for Ether and someone else wants to sell Ether for DAI, then you can directly settle these trades against each other, so you don't have the need to tap into any on-chain existing AMM liquidity. So no miner, no searcher, no block builder would be able to actually like inject any transactions in the middle of it.
Yeah. And what's the risk of, because I think, people might look at this and say, because you have these solvers that are looking at the chain, what is the incentive for them? There's an economic incentive, but there could be sort of spam solvers that come onto the system and perhaps censor transactions. Like, what's the risk of that happening? And are you like mitigating for that somehow?
Yes. So in that sense, we have a very similar system to proof of stake. So any solver who wants to participate in a competition, they have to stake some tokens, and only then they would be whitelisted to participate in the competition. And in case of exactly this sort of malicious behavior, they would be slashed.
Okay. But an actor who wouldn't be economically incentivized, would they be able to, of course they would get slashed, but like, are there mechanisms to actually prevent this from happening other than the incentive mechanism? Or
you mean in the first place?
Like a state actor, for instance, that wanted to like censor CoW?
No, you would have basically. What do you mean by state actor?
Like a nation state, like someone with unlimited money, right? Like imagine someone with unlimited money that wants to censor CoW. Is that feasible?
So there is still some components that are still a little bit more centralized that we would like them to be, but we are working on a decentralization for this. So right now the whitelist is done by CoW though. So theoretically, this is really like a decentralized framework already to ensure who are the different placeholders. If there is some sort of way for them to figure out who is running a solver and like trying to take influence on how they're submitting solutions, that could theoretically probably still be possible. But then I would argue the more decentralized the solver competition is, meaning the more actors you have who are actually providing solutions, the less likely this can actually happen. So right now we have about 10 different solvers running, which is already pretty good, but we are aiming to get more. And the bigger the competition, the less likely anyone can interfere.
Okay. And how big is CoW these days? Like, I mean, I use it quite often. I've stopped using every other DEX aggregator and just like do all my trades through CoW. So it's great. It's a great product. How much like trading and gets done on CoW? What's the volumes and
so I think we have
grown?
crossed the 15 billion mark, and we have around 500 daily users, and essentially, it's going super well. So we are planning to deploy on other networks like Polygon fairly soon. We have a huge user demand for that to deploy on other networks. So hopefully there we can grow the pie a bit more. And in terms of DEX aggregator comparison, I think we are like similar to Matcha at the moment in terms of volume.
Okay. I think one of the things that is going to start proliferating and becoming more mainstream in the next years is this ability to do like cross-chain swapping, where you have like ETH on the Ethereum mainnet, and you want to have like No on the GNO token on the Gnosis chain, and like you could do that yourself by swapping the token and then bridging it over. But are there any plans to like build that into the UX? Because I think like that's really the holy grail.
Right. There's definitely one thing that we're currently looking at, and so essentially, what we could already fairly simply deploy is like a way that the user on the UI can see if a token has better liquidity available on another network. So let's say a user's coming to Gnosis chain and wants to trade a large amount of whatever USDC or a different token that has less liquidity on Gnosis chain. Then the UI could show them, if you're willing to wait for like 7 minutes or so, then we can offer you 20% better price. Because
it's getting the liquidity from another chain.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so it's like a different use. Okay. Yeah, different use case, but valuable one. Yeah.
And then the solver essentially would be able to bridge the liquidity over and exchange it on the other network, get a better price, and bridge the liquidity back.
Okay.
In this way.
And do you guys have any like opinions about the types of like the bridges that would be used there, or are you like building your own bridge, or?
If any, like building bridges is not necessarily our expertise.
Yeah.
So if anything, we would probably have some sort of collaboration. We have been talking to Gnosis Chain about it, but I think we will most likely not focus on building any bridges at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? Like, what kinds of like bridging technologies are you most excited about, or what would be more likely to make its way in, like into integrations? Would it be like ZK bridges, or some kind of trustless bridge, or like a state proof verification bridge, something similar to IBC? Or do you have any like opinions about this yet?
I know there's a really good team currently working on a ZK bridge for Gnosis chain, so that's definitely interesting, but I wouldn't call myself an expert to really judge what bridging technology ultimately would be the one that we should be going for. Okay.
And do you have any alpha? Like, what's on the roadmap? I didn't see many talks, but did you make any big announcements here?
We didn't make it as an announcement actually, but we do have our roadmap planned out, and so there's one big feature that a lot of people hope for us to be working on is limit orders.
Oh yeah.
So that's gonna come in the next few months. Then deployment on Polygon. And then another feature that's very CoW specific is allowing users to wait for a next bigger batch. So basically having canonical batches that would take place maybe every 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And then users can tap into, like basically per default say, okay, I want to be part of a bigger batch in return for better price promise that I would be receiving.
Okay, so as a user, instead of like swapping now, you sort of defer the time at which your trade goes through, and you try to like batch everybody at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting, but it's also kind of like counterintuitive to crypto, right? Because like in crypto, everything's instant, and I think a lot of the narratives around crypto has been like, hey, like things are instant. In the traditional world, you have like this T+1 or whatever, but here we're kind of coming back to these kind of specific time frames for things to happen. I mean, like if people want to do that, like
Right, so that's actually an interesting point. Like, we have about half of our users were requesting like fast transactions, and the other half was saying, no, we want to actually be able to wait a bit longer and able to get a better price. And there's a lot of trades that are actually not so time sensitive, where people like before they go to bed,
Yeah.
they're like, if whatever price is reached, I would just want it to be executed. And,
Yeah.
like, it's definitely something that we want to play around with. Another question is also like, what's a good time frame that people were willing to wait for? So right now we're thinking 15 minutes, but potentially reduce it more to like 10 minutes or something. It's something to play around with.
Very cool. Cool. Well, thanks for being on the Interop, and yeah, I love CoW. I mean, I use it fairly regularly, and I love getting the little moo when my
main USP.
Don't ever change that.
We won't. Maybe we add some other sounds.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.